The night before our wedding, my husband suddenly confessed to me. He said he was a reincarnated person. In his previous life, I was ruthless and obsessed with vanity. I turned the entire household upside down with my antics, now reborn in this life. He intended to annul this marriage. Hearing Zhang Bowling say this, I was stunned at first. It took me a long time to regain my composure. After all, we were betrothed since childhood. He comes from a noble family, one of the 5 surnames and 7 clans. His countenance is dignified, radiant as the bright moon. He is the epitome of a noble gentleman. As for me, I am the legitimate daughter of the Minister of War, with my mother having passed away early, and my father frequently falling victim to political schemes in court. A single tree cannot make a forest. Thus, this seemingly well-matched marriage is actually me marrying above my station, from a young age. I was disciplined by my family to ensure every word and action met the standards befitting a noble lady of the capital. Music, chess, calligraphy, painting, virtue, speech, appearance, and needlework. Not a single day was spent without diligent practice. All I sought was to rightfully become the matriarch of the Zhang family, leaving no room for others to find fault. Yet now, with this engagement abruptly and inexplicably called off, how am I to face myself? What's more, it was for such an absurd reason, yet the man before me spoke with such sincerity. He raised his eyes and recounted, word by word, all that had happened in his past life. He told of how I had married into the Zhang family and how I had won the approval of Zhang's mother. After marriage, they spent 2 or 3 years in mutual support and affection. Later, his true nature gradually came to light. He was ruthless and stopped at no evil. Not only did she forbid him from taking concubines, but she also turned the entire household upside down with her antics. At times, they even meddled in court affairs, turning their Zhang family into a laughingstock in the capital. Several times, they placed him in situations where he was seen as disloyal and unfilial. Now that I've been given a second chance, the man raised his eyes, his gaze dark and inscrutable. How could I possibly choose you again? I could only laugh, a matter of pure fabrication. Yet he spoke of it with such conviction. How utterly shameless. As for the reasons behind this, I see them clearly. It's simply that they think the Chen family is declining in influence, no longer a match for the prestigious Zhang family, and fearing public criticism, they concocted this so-called reincarnation story. So I didn't hold back and went straight to the point, saying, what rebirth and reincarnation? Do you take people for 3-year-old children? If you truly feel this marriage arrangement is unfair, just say so directly. It would only make you appear more open and honest. Rest assured, our Chen family are reasonable people. I'm not that desperate for you either. I straightened my sleeves, looking at him coldly. The man's eyes flickered slightly, just as I turned to leave. He suddenly grabbed my sleeve. You don't believe me? Ridiculous. How can I possibly believe you about such an absurd matter? I couldn't help but retort, lifting my gaze, the moment our eyes met. I saw his gaze darken as he coldly uttered 3 words, Chen Yi, and I froze. This was the childhood name my mother had given me. After my mother passed away, like a lamp extinguished in death, this name became taboo. No one will ever call again. It can be said that, apart from those closest to me, no one else could possibly know. How could he? Could it be? I looked at him in disbelief, as if sensing the shift in my attitude. The man spoke even more slowly. In the 7th year of Yongning, you stole a taste of osmanthus candy from the ancestral altar and cut your right wrist on a piece of broken porcelain. I instinctively clenched my right wrist, the scar beneath my sleeve burning faintly. That was a secret from when I was 7 years old. One even my personal maid never knew about. At the age of 9, your father elevated the concubine to the status of wife, and you knelt alone before your mother's grave for an entire night, word by word, slowly and cruelly. He uttered that past which belonged solely to me. All of this, you personally told me in our previous life. For some reason, through these words, I seemed to catch a glimpse of a version of myself that existed in the same time and space yet was entirely different. She was ruthless and obsessed with vanity. Though she had climbed above her station, she failed to cherish it. She single-handedly caused an irreversible outcome. In the end, the man, reborn into a new life, sentenced her from different timelines to death. And also, he raised his hand, pointing at my chest, on your right breast, there's a lotus birthmark. When the man spoke these words, his voice was like jade soaked in well water, chilling enough to send a shiver down one's spine. I froze. Chen Zhashua, I've told you, in this lifetime, I will never marry you no matter what, our fate ends here." Even after returning to the mansion, the man's words still echoed in her ears. Sunlight streamed through the carved prism, falling upon the hem of her skirt. I knelt before the ancestral hall, staring at my mother's memorial tablet, lost in thought for a long time. Her final words surfaced in my mind. By then, Mother was already terminally ill. She held my hand, her sunken eyes holding the last glimmer of light. "My health is failing, and your father is hopeless. This marriage is your mother's final scheme for you. Our Ian must be dignified and virtuous. Once you marry into the Zheng family, your mother will have no regrets left in this life." Each word drips with blood. Until her dying breath, she believed that as long as my virtue, appearance, speech, and skills were flawless, if I could endure until the coming-of-age ceremony, endure until the 3 letters and 6 rites, she could endure her way to securing a splendid future for me. I always think this way too, so all these years I've lived cautiously, watching every step I take. Not a single day has been truly carefree. To secure this marriage, how much gold and silver has father sent to the Zheng household? Everyone is waiting for me to marry into the Zheng family. Former life as husband and wife, rebirth, another lifetime. Despite all my efforts, I was still rejected for marriage on such baseless grounds. How am I supposed to explain this? Just as I had anticipated, the moment the letter of rejection arrived at our home, my father kicked open the door to my chamber. "You wretch," he slammed the table in fury, "how could I have raised such a shameless creature like you?" Before I could speak, he raised his hand and struck me across the face. A sharp slap rang out, the pain burned fiercely. It was clearly the Zheng family who went back on their word regarding the marriage agreement. So why is father hitting me? I couldn't help but argue back. Even now, you still refuse to admit your fault." His hand trembled as he pointed his index finger at the space between my eyebrows. "Do you know what the Zheng family said when they came to break off the engagement today?" As he spoke, he gritted his teeth and threw the letter of annulment at me. On the white paper, the words lacking in virtue were glaringly written in bold characters. He said, "If our Chen family doesn't admit to this crime, he'll make sure everyone knows about the birthmark on your chest, even if the Zheng family is at fault. To protect your innocence, we have no choice but to accept this accusation." Qin Jiashue. How could I have given birth to such a shameless daughter? The man's eyes burned with venom, as if he wished I would drop dead to atone for my sins. I froze in place. The metallic taste of blood spread across my lips. Unbelievable. Zhang Bowling. "Oh Zhang Bowling, you truly despise me to the core. A woman's reputation is a noose around her neck, yet you insist on using it as leverage to break off the engagement, turning memories of past lives into the blades that slowly torture me in this one. Only now do I understand that when he spoke of 2 unrelated matters, he meant to watch me fall into the abyss with his own eyes. Never again could I taint this noble, virtuous gentleman, pure as the wind and clear as the moon. Speak." Father's voice grew louder. "If you hadn't lost your virtue before marriage, how could he have known of such things?" For a moment, countless arguments in my defense flashed through my mind, but my lips parted and closed, yet not a single word could I utter. It was beyond explanation. Whether it happened or not is no longer important. One could say that even if I were to fight to the death, it wouldn't have the slightest impact on the Zheng family's reputation. The mere accusation of impurity is enough to brand me with eternal shame. Such is the discipline imposed upon women in this era. I couldn't win the argument. Misfortunes never come singly in this world. After the engagement was broken off, I suddenly fell seriously ill, curled up on the bed. My ears buzzed incessantly, the high fever burning my temples, but even so, it seemed fate was not yet done with me. In a daze, I heard the whispers outside the window. "Jinx. Getting her engagement broken off before even marrying. How are we, the Qin family, supposed to maintain our standing in the capital? If we'd known she'd be so shameless, she should have followed her ill-fated mother to the grave long ago." It was the voice of my aunt. Father remained silent, letting those venomous words creep in through the door crack. I curled up under the quilt, trembling uncontrollably. The door was pushed open, and in my daze, someone wiped my forehead with a handkerchief. "Good girl." It was the maid, Chuntao. She sat by my bedside, her voice choked with tears. "Tell me, how could a perfectly healthy body suddenly become like this?" A scalding tear fell onto the back of my hand. Seeing this scene, my heart was filled with even more sorrow. I don't understand. Even bystanders couldn't help but shed tears of pity for me. Yet why? Why did the father who raised me since childhood and that so-called husband from my past life, with whom I shared over a decade of marital bonds, have the heart to hurt me so deeply? The pain is beyond words. The sound of the argument outside continued. If you ask me, you should quickly find some poor family to marry into. The concubine lowered her voice. Squire Wang from the west side of town sent word the other day, saying he's willing to offer 300 taels as betrothal gifts. A sudden metallic taste surged in my throat. I know this man. He was a merchant over 50 years old who had taken 13 concubines. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. In the eyes of the world, a woman who had been rejected in marriage was like a piece of rotten meat, fair game for anyone to tear at. Their impatience was palpable. The very next day, my father personally summoned a matchmaker to our home. As the beaded curtain was lifted, a heavy wave of perfumed powder wafted through. The woman covered her nose and mouth with a handkerchief. Upon seeing my face, she froze for a moment, then scrutinized my fever-ridden body from head to toe. Oh dear, this one reeks of sickness. She took half a step back. If you ask me, before the fever clouds her mind completely, she should be sent to butchery in the outskirts. Even as a second wife, she could fetch something in return, couldn't she? How dare you? I propped myself up on the edge of the bed. No matter what, I am still Chin. Alas, before I could finish, my stepmother cut in sharply. Chin, what? After doing such a thing, aren't you ashamed enough? Do you know what people are saying outside now? They say you offered yourself shamelessly, and you still have the face to mention the Chin family. The room fell silent at once. After a long while, father finally spoke from the side. If you're dead set against this marriage, then tomorrow you'll be sent to Tsiyun Nunnery, as if we never had this daughter. With that, he turned and left in anger. I watched his retreating figure in disbelief. How laughable that 16 years of father-daughter affection could ultimately not withstand a few idle words from others. Dusk enveloped the land. Following the faint moonlight, I felt for the golden hairpin beneath my pillow. A cold sensation spread from my fingertips, while hatred churned in my chest. At this moment, a thought suddenly surfaced in my mind, a crazy, vicious thought. I wanted Zhang Bowling to die. I will make the entire Chin family pay with their lives. I want those who harmed me to never have a chance to rise again. I will make them fall into the same miserable situation as mine. Through the flickering candlelight, my reflection in the bronze mirror gradually merged with that of a venomous, scheming woman. Indeed, as he said, I was born a ruthless and vindictive person. Unfortunately, I didn't get my wish, because my father arranged a marriage for me. I heard that the other party personally came to propose. His surname is Gu, and his name is Ling Yun. He is a deputy general under Uncle Jiang. I know him. The man was originally a general from the enemy state, yet on the battlefield, he personally killed his own lord. He defected to our country, though he abandoned darkness for light. Such treacherous conduct was ultimately despised by scholars. His reputation is quite tarnished, but in the eyes of outsiders, we were a perfect match. A petty general who betrays his master for glory and a young lady of questionable virtue. How could they not be considered a match made in heaven? Yet even for someone like him, I didn't want to drag him into my mess without reason. So when I first met Gu Lingyun, I told him the truth. Tell him the real reason I was rejected wasn't because of any moral failings. It's because my betrothed was a man who had been reborn. In his words, I was ruthless and obsessed with vanity. He didn't want to repeat the same mistakes. That's why I abruptly called off this engagement, and I happened to have a birthmark on my chest, which he knew about through his memories of a past life. So he used this to threaten me. Someone like me, you'd do best not to provoke. Leaning on my just recovered body, I smiled and said, after all, the rumors are already spreading. He hates me so much that if we were to actually marry, it might end up harming you in the future. To put it bluntly, I paused slightly, my gaze falling on the sword at his waist. If what he said is true, a venomous woman like me with a heart as poisonous as a snake or scorpion would never be a good match for anyone. You'd better find someone else. Faced with my frank words, the man merely smiled. He stared at me intently, then shook his head. I don't think so. You can't even take care of yourself right now. Yet you're still worried about burdening others. Someone with such thoughts, how could they ever become truly ruthless? I froze, then laughed and defended myself. What if my nature changes in the future? After all, he did reveal many of my private secrets. He must truly be reborn, so, who knows, I might undergo a drastic change in temperament someday. You'd better not take that gamble. I remained standing straight, quietly and patiently awaiting his response, as if being judged. Time passed minute by minute, a light chuckle came from beside the ear. "We'll cross that bridge when we come to it." He curled his lips, revealing a set of gleaming white teeth. "All I know is that right now, standing before me is this young lady of the Chen family. Virtuous and talented, excelling in music, chess, calligraphy, and painting, a model of noble women in the capital, someone I couldn't even aspire to reach in the past." I froze, a bitter taste rising in my throat. I always thought that after my engagement was broken off, I could no longer bear such a reputation, but now, someone tells me that I am indeed such a person, even after being rejected in marriage. I remain the model of a refined lady praised by female officials. Chen Jiaxue will always be Chen Jiaxue, even if covered in dust, it still shines with its own pure light, not defined by anyone. If this marriage truly cannot be agreed upon, it is certainly not your fault, but rather that I am unworthy. He raised his hand, insistently offering the marriage certificate. The man's fingertips still carried the chill of the northern frontier. Moreover, what kind of person one becomes in the future is determined by oneself. Young lady, don't belittle yourself. With such intelligence and grace, why should you undervalue yourself? My breath caught. "You truly think so?" Words from the depths of my heart. His eyes shimmered with emotion, carrying a pleading tone. "Miss Chen, if you have no one in your heart, choose me. I may not come from a noble family, but my home lacks for nothing, and I have some reputation to my name." As he spoke, his voice grew lighter. "In the days to come, I will surely protect you and keep you safe, ensuring you live freely without suffering the slightest grievance. I swear it." The young man blinked his eyes. He was originally a rogue. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. The wedding was set for the 7th day of the 7th month. Before the marriage, I had no intention of stirring up trouble, but someone just had to send an invitation. It was from the eldest princess. As for the reason, it was simply because the flower festival was approaching, and she was inviting noble ladies from the capital to celebrate the occasion together. I sat beneath the corridor, holding this gilded invitation in my hand, lost in thought. Once again, "It was Gu Lingyun who made the decision for me," he said. "The jade may shatter, yet the mountains and rivers remain unchanged, still reflecting the light of heaven and the shadows of clouds. This is a poem you once wrote. How can someone who writes such profound words trap themselves in a cocoon woven from the threads of gossip and slander? You must step out eventually." The banquet was set in the riverside pavilion. I had just turned the corner of the winding corridor when I heard a mocking laugh. "Do you think the eldest Miss Chen will come today?" Frozen in place, the vibrant spring scenery in the garden suddenly turned icy. Probably not. After being jilted, she must be too heartbroken to show her face. I heard this new husband of hers is a rough warrior from the battlefield. Her eyes rolled playfully. "Miss Chen might have to endure hardship and poverty from now on," another chimed in, her gaze lightly sweeping over my plain attire. "But looking at her dull appearance, it does seem to match the barbaric lands." With that, they all burst into laughter. It was indeed a trap. I took a deep breath and slowly revealed myself. The moment I arrived, the gathering fell silent, or whispered among themselves, or with a mocking expression, each harboring their own thoughts. "Xuanyang, you've come at just the right time," the daughter of the Hanlin academician said with a smile, breaking the awkwardness. She first mentioned a few trivial matters before shifting the topic. "This year's 100 Flowers scroll is still missing a main painting. In previous years, your virtue, appearance, speech, and skills have always been the best among us. This painting must be done by you." As she spoke, she had already placed the paintbrush in my hand. I couldn't very well refuse. The wolf hairbrush spread ink across the rice paper as I held my breath, outlining the serene charm of the lotus pond. A summer lotus painting sprang to life on the paper. Just as I finished the final stroke with a flourish, I heard a mocking laugh behind me. Too obsessed with formal resemblance at the expense of spiritual resonance, overly crafted. Exactly. Someone lifted the painting paper with a silk fan. The inscribed poem is also mediocre. Phrases like "lotus leaves reaching the sky" sound like vulgar street doggerel. Yes, yes, how come Miss Chen's painting skills have regressed so much? Faint murmurs of disappointment could be heard. Anyone with eyes can see this is deliberate nitpicking. Behind me, Chun Tao was so anxious her eyes reddened. She was about to argue when I stopped her. Looking up, beneath the magnolia tree, Zhang Bowling stood in a moon-white scholar's robe, hands clasped behind his back. The man's lips curled with a faint, elusive smile. "I see." At this moment, I finally see clearly the eager expressions of these noble ladies. They are currying favor with the future head of the Zheng family. Using my humiliation as their offering, no matter how I paint, whether well or poorly, it holds no importance to them. All they need is a token of allegiance, that's all there is to it. Such painting skills indeed cannot be considered the finest among the noble ladies of the capital. Zhang Bowling slowly approached. Why not take advantage of today to relinquish this title to someone more deserving? What say you? A sudden uproar erupted. Since young Master Zheng has spoken, it must naturally be followed. Yes, Miss Chen, times have indeed changed. Nowadays, everyone must speak with their true capabilities. You're absolutely right, young Master Zheng. How can such mediocre work claim to be the best? Even the random scribbles of my 3-year-old nephew at home are more vivid than this painting. I clenched my sleeves tightly, watching them with cold eyes. Who says a woman's brilliance lies only in calligraphy and painting? Suddenly, someone shouted loudly. It was Gu Lingyun. Under the astonished gazes of the crowd, he rode his horse through the moon gate, his dark cloak fluttering like the wings of a hawk. Before I could speak, the man raised his hand and threw the carved bow towards me. Catch! I instantly understood and reached out to grasp the hand he offered. Swiftly mounting the horse, as we drew close, the man lowered his voice and said, "A daughter of the Qin family should seek justice on horseback." I understood. Since justice cannot be reclaimed, then let us turn this place upside down, just what I had in mind. The bow was drawn full as the moon, the arrow swift as a shooting star. The first arrow was loosed, with a sharp twang like tearing silk. The high-hanging plaque inscribed "A Gathering of Blossoms" fell instantly. The second arrow pierced through the green brick beside Zhang Bowling's feet, startling him into stumbling backward. The third arrow aimed straight for the magnolia tree's crown, striking a bundle 100 meters away with perfect accuracy. The banquet fell completely silent, with no one daring to utter another word of dissent. Witnessing this scene, I suddenly grasped the profound meaning behind Gu Lingyun's actions. The world says women should be confined to silken comforts. Forgetting the Qin family ancestors earned their honors on horseback, music, chess, calligraphy, and painting are but embellishments. Unyielding fortitude is the true foundation of one's being. I see. What do you think? I draw my bow, sweeping my gaze over the silent crowd. Was this display worthy of your eyes? Frightened thus, those noble ladies no longer bore their earlier airs of superiority. They scattered in panic, some hiding under tables, others taking cover in the bushes. Each one flustered and disheveled, their hair ornaments in disarray. Truly a sight of utter humiliation. Running my fingers over the unweathered arrow marks on the carved bow, I glanced at the most arrogant one among them and spoke calmly. "Sister, instead of meddling in others' affairs, perhaps you should tend to your own. I heard the 7th concubine your father recently took in was originally the top courtesan of drunken immortal pavilion. If you don't intervene soon, I fear it won't be long before you're left with nothing but the northwest wind to drink." Then, shifting my gaze slightly toward the round-faced young lady, I added, "And you, did you just call me dull? It's still better than some people who can't hide their filthy thoughts, no matter how fine the powder they use." Finally, her gaze fell on Zhang Bowling once more. "And you, young Master Zhang, you always say that in my past life, I was vain and had a heart as venomous as a snake. But with your actions, indulging your cousin to publicly humiliate a vulnerable girl, silently allowing them to use chastity as a weapon, compared to my past self, how much better are you?" The man raised his eyes, he glanced at me, then at the radiant Gu Lingyun standing behind me. At this moment, I actually caught a flicker of jealousy in his eyes, but I didn't care, still staring at him coldly. "You keep saying you want nothing more to do with me, so I hope you mean what you say. If we're to have no connection, then let it be truly none. Don't let your actions contradict your words and make yourself a laughingstock." With that, I tightened my grip on the reins. He strode away with his head held high. Only after we had gone a long way from the waterside pavilion did I finally let out a long sigh of relief. It felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from my shoulders. Then, I turned to look at the young general behind me and asked, "How did you know I was skilled in horseback archery? The first time I saw you, I noticed the calluses on your hands and guessed," he replied. After all, having fought on the battlefield for so long, how could it be hidden from him? I lowered my gaze to the carved bow in my hand. It was something my grandfather personally taught me when I was 10. It's just a pity that it didn't align with the proper demeanor expected of a lady, so I never mentioned it in front of others. He flashed his usual smile. You know what? The way you drew your bow just now was 1,000 times more beautiful than when they adorned themselves with flowers, so from now on, don't confine yourself to the inner chambers anymore, my young lady, smooth talker. I turned back, looking at his high-spirited appearance. I recalled the moment when he reached out his hand just now. My heart suddenly stirred. I couldn't help but say, thank you. Thank you for his sudden appearance when I was in dire straits. Thank you for reminding me not to belittle myself, and thank you for saving me from peril today. Gu Lingyun was taken aback when he suddenly called me Qin Zhaoxue. He said, come a little closer. Thinking he had something to say, I leaned in closer, only to see the man stand up, his warm breath coming from above. The next second, he gently planted a kiss on the corner of my lips, like a dragonfly skimming the water's surface. You're welcome, just give me yourself in return. The man relaxed his brows, a triumphant smile playing on his features. This was the first time I'd been this close to someone. Stunned for a moment, it took a long time to regain composure. By the time I finally came to my senses, there was no one left in front of me. Bastard, the incident of galloping a horse during the banquet quickly spread. I thought I would be punished, but unexpectedly, the Grand Princess not only didn't blame me, but also praised me for being a woman who doesn't let men surpass her in valor. She had dreamed of galloping across the battlefield since childhood, but unfortunately, being born into the royal family, she was confined to the palace for most of her life, never able to fulfill her wish, so naturally, she was extremely fond of someone like me who acted in such a manner. It's a pity I wasn't at the banquet then, allowing others to humiliate you. That was my fault. The woman held my hand, chatting happily with me. We had only a few topics between us, and as we talked, the conversation suddenly turned to Zhang Bowling. I know a thing or two about the real reason he broke off the engagement with you, the princess said. That's really a bit too much. Do you think it's possible? He might have some unspeakable difficulties but couldn't bring himself to say it, so he deliberately made up such a lie. She paused for a moment, didn't look into it further. This starting point is indeed novel, but I remain unmoved. Still, I shake my head firmly. It doesn't matter anymore, no matter what unspeakable difficulties he may have. As long as he proposed to break off the engagement, there's no possibility left between us. Moreover, they went on to do such things afterward. Not having the intent to kill is already considered my magnanimity. Seeing my determination, she stopped saying anything further, and later, as if to confirm the princess's suspicions, some inexplicable people began appearing around me. For instance, casually saving a young woman from being harassed turned out to be the personal maid of the Zhang household. To repay the life-saving favor, she wanted to tell me the truth. She said their young master often calls out my name in his sleep. Zhang Bowling holds me in his heart. As for the annulment of the engagement, it was beyond my control. As for the reason behind this, it's actually because, I don't know, I don't want to know. I didn't listen any further. Another example is the monk I met while praying at the temple, who possessed profound knowledge of both ancient and modern times. He held my hand, tears welling up in his eyes. He said that in a past life, Zhang Bowling and I shared a lifetime of love, but I died tragically while trying to save him. So in this reincarnated life, he was determined to prevent this tragedy from happening. We must never get married, even watching the one he loved marry someone else. He found it sweet as honey. Immersive translate, and my response to this is, the wedding date with Gu Lingyun was quietly moved up. There are less than 2 months left until the wedding day. To distance myself from my family, I moved to my grandfather's courtyard. 3 in, 3 out. Although small, it is fully equipped with everything inside. You can grow flowers, you can read books, you can also lie back in a rocking chair under the corridor and rest with your eyes closed. Whenever Gu Lingyun had a spare moment, he would gallop over in a whirlwind of energy, sometimes bringing exotic trinkets from beyond the Great Wall, other times the latest pastries from the capital. He went out of his way to cheer me up. The last thing he brought me was a kite he had made with his own hands. At our farewell, he told me the emperor had issued an edict, ordering him and General Jiang to lead an army of 100,000 to conquer the southern barbarians. This time, it might be a long while before I can return, so, I was thinking. The man lowered his gaze to look at me, his eyes filled with an inscrutable light. Maybe we should call off this engagement first. I'm afraid if I... Before he could finish his sentence, I slapped him across the face. One more chance. I mean, he indeed changed his tone. reverting to his previous carefree and unrestrained demeanor. This campaign, I will surely return victorious. I'll definitely win you the title of a general's wife. That's more like it. All right. I nodded gently. I'll be waiting for you. Come back early. This journey to the northern frontier is fraught with twists and turns. In the beginning, he could still send messages to me, telling me that all was well, urging me not to worry, but then, there was no further news, for 7 consecutive days, and when news finally came again, it was from the imperial court. It was said that Gu Lingyun and General Jiang had divided their forces when suddenly a fierce storm arose. He fell into an ambush, leaving no trace of his remains. At that moment, I was flying a kite. Upon hearing the news, I froze for a second. The string in my hand snapped at just the right moment. The kite circled around the door beam, then with a whoosh, flew up and got stuck in the treetop. Bastard, the person's already dead, and you're still making me worry. I rolled up my sleeves and climbed step by step up the rough tree trunk. The bark scraped my palms raw, several slips, yet I managed to hold on tight. Just as my hand was about to touch the kite, a sudden gust of wind came, lifting it away. The white kite swirled in the air, then brushed past my palm before landing on the ground. It seems to be deliberately working against me. No real meaning. I sat on the tree branch, gazing at the distant gray sky, when suddenly tears began to fall uncontrollably. From quiet sobs to wailing cries, one after another, burning the back of my hand. On the 3rd day after the news of Gu Lingyun's death arrived, an uninvited guest came to my door, Zhang Bowling. When I saw him again, the man had lost all his former arrogance. He stood at the door, holding an oil paper umbrella. He looked somewhat thinner than before. He had come for no other reason than to renew our marriage arrangement. Look, this is Zhang Bowling, a man who is forever aloof and superior. Whether it's breaking off an engagement or proposing marriage, he speaks of it with such ease. He always stood within his own perspective, and the wounds and pains he inflicted upon others were not even worth mentioning. I naturally paid him no heed. Just as I turned to leave, the man tightly grabbed my wrist, his eyes red. He uttered my name word by word. Qin Jiaxue, do you know the real reason I called off the engagement? Haven't you already had those maids and monks tell me? I spoke mockingly, but so what? What can it change, even if there are countless unspeakable difficulties? What's done is done, what's wrong is wrong. Why humiliate yourself here? No, those were just excuses I made to win you back. He took a step closer, looked down at me for a long time, and finally spoke slowly. As for the real reason, it's because you don't love me. In our past life, we were married for 16 years, but you never loved me for a single day. The man's eyes brimmed with overwhelming anguish, his tone bordering on madness. In my presence, you always play the virtuous wife, so proper it's nauseating. What I want is the radiant Qin Jiaxue, not the submissive Lady Zhang who blindly follows tradition. I hate you. I hate that after decades together, you've never truly loved me. That's why I made up that lie. I didn't want to continue with this marriage anymore. Besides, I wanted to see how Qin Jiaxue, who's always been bound by rules and etiquette, would react upon learning her future would be completely different. But now, I've made up my mind, he said, taking a deep breath. Even if you don't love me, I still want to marry you. I can't let you go, Jiaxue. That day, when I saw you radiant on horseback, I realized you had long been etched in my heart. After all, we've already been husband and wife for a lifetime. Hearing him say these words, the smile in my heart grew even deeper. I had thought he was simply born proud, unable to see the pain of others, but now, I finally realize he is despicable, a thoroughgoing scoundrel. All these years, to be worthy of the Zhang family, I began learning music, chess, calligraphy, and painting at the age of 7. My fingers even bled in the winter, just to avoid the harsh reprimands of the teaching matrons, forcing myself to become a living puppet. I once thought that carving away my flesh to fit into the mold of the Zhang family's teachings would earn me a place on their ancestral altar for centuries to come. Yet I never imagined this would become the very reason he despises me. How could this not break my heart? Zhang Bowling. For the first time, I uttered his full name. You deserve this. You deserve me not loving you. You deserve watching me marry someone else with your own eyes. You are unworthy not only of my love in the past life, but also of my marriage vow in this life. In the past life, you found me dull and tried to push me into the abyss. Now that you see me devoted to another, you can't wait to win me back. Since when does the world offer such good deals? I spoke the truth word by word. Zhang Bowling, someone like you is unworthy of anything." As if struck where it hurt, the man looked at me in disbelief. He wanted to say something more, but I stopped him. The next second, I shut the door, letting his arguments be swallowed by the heavy rain. Gu Lingyun returned on a winter's day. At that time, I was wrapped in a fox fur cloak, warming myself by the fire under the corridor, when someone suddenly shouted, "Miss, look, the Southern Expedition Army has returned." The teacup in my hand shattered with a clink. How could this be? He isn't. Could it be? One thought after another pounded through my mind. Not daring to hesitate for even a moment, I lifted my skirts and ran out of the courtyard gate, spotting the black-armored general dismounting his horse in the distance. The snow crunched beneath his combat boots. The man slowly approached, tilting his head. He called out with a smile, "Joshua," a face identical to the one in his memories. Like a dream, Gu. I opened my mouth, my throat clogged as if stuffed with water-soaked cotton. For a moment, I couldn't speak. He took off his crimson cloak and wrapped it around me, his movements uncharacteristically gentle, not even wearing a cloak in the snow. "How are you going to kneel at the wedding if you catch a cold?" Before the words had fully left his mouth, the urgent sound of horse hooves suddenly echoed at the gate. The golden armor of the Imperial Guards gleamed coldly in the winter light. At the forefront, a eunuch held high a bright yellow scroll, clearing his throat before slowly unfurling the Imperial decree. By the Emperor's command, he took my hand and knelt together. Deputy General Gu Lingyun, who endured humiliation in years past, infiltrated the enemy camp alone, maneuvering among wolves and tigers, securing vital intelligence for the court and achieving repeated merits. Now, having further distinguished himself in quelling the rebellion, is hereby appointed as the great general who guards the nation. The man beside me took the imperial edict with an air of composure. How could this be? I stared at him in disbelief. "The south is rife with miasma. I had to feign death to lure the enemy deeper," he said, a cunning glint flashing in his eyes. "I see. Then all that so-called endurance of humiliation." Suddenly, it dawned on me. Could it be? There's no helping it. Once you become a spy, you'll have to endure humiliation and bear heavy burdens for a few years. Still with that same careless demeanor. No wonder everyone says you'd betray your master for glory. It doesn't matter anymore. After all, the truth is out now. He lowered his gaze, then looked back at me. "See, I didn't break my promise." "Indeed. I've fought to make you a general's wife." Snowflakes fell from the sky, swirling and dancing in the air. "Doesn't count." "Why?" "Because you came back after the wedding date." I shouted at him. "You're the general, but I'm not your wife." All right. He hurriedly put on an expression of admitting his mistake. "Then let's get married tomorrow." "Okay, not good." "Why?" "Our wedding day." "Why should you get to decide?" I still refused to back down. "Then you pick the date." He tilted his head to look at me, his eyes sparkling with amusement. "Whatever Miss Chin says goes." "All right, tomorrow."